a beautiful winter's morning. Well, it is for some of us. Sad fact is, some of our more vulnerable in society won't make it through the winter. It's not a beautiful morning for them. Just been to the shops and helped an old lady who was struggling put her shopping on the bus. And we were speaking and she said, "Oh, I'm going home." She says, "It's nice to get out. It's warmer outside." It made me think, yesterday I watched Starmer. I don't know if it was Prime Minister's Question Times, but it was certainly in Parliament. Basically dismiss the fact that thousands of elderly people are going to die this winter based on Labour's own figures prior to the election. And not only that, when you think of all the extra hospital visits because of people with pneumonia, hypothermia, and when you think of all the extra care that people of a certain age are going to need, people that have give their blood and sweat to make this country what it is, pay taxes all their life, whether they've got money now or whether they haven't, whether they've got equity in the house, whether they haven't, they've earned every single penny in that, while successive governments have taxed them to the hilt and now abused them. And I thought of Starmer just dismissing the fact that these people are going to die. He was like an actual psychopath, and you'd have to have psychopathic tendencies to think that way.
No Prime Minister wants to do what we have to do in relation to the winter fuel allowance, but we have to take the tough decision to stabilise our economy to ensure that we can grow it for the future.
Yet they're spending £22 billion on a carbon capture project. They're sending 26 billion, I think it is, overseas to Africa to help them with their net zero folly. We send 3 billion a year to the Ukraine to support NATO's proxy war. I just feel sorry for the Ukrainian people. It's always the civilians who suffer, whether it's energy prices or getting bombed. If you prod a monster like Putin enough, he will lash out. And NATO have severely prodded. We're spending millions a day, up to £10 million a day now, on illegal migrants, putting them up in hotels, in social housing, and yet our own veterans and pensioners freeze. Choose between eating and heating. It's wrong. And this is because they want to save 1.4 billion because we've supposedly got a black hole of 22 billion that I've got footage of Labour MPs saying in Parliament they thought was 46 billion prior to being elected. I thought of Starmer, all the things he said prior to this election.
To Dewsbury, winter before last, in the height of the energy prices going up, and spoke to an 84-year-old woman, worked all her life, obviously now a pensioner, and she told me that she doesn't get out of bed till midday because she didn't want to turn the heating on.
Yeah, it's awful. And
then when she did get out of bed, she had this sort of thermal jacket that she just wore all day long so she didn't have to put the heating up very high. That's an awful position to put a pensioner in.
Yeah.
And there are just too many of those stories. Another pensioner, it was actually, we had a group of them in Dewsbury, was describing to me going around the supermarket and picking something up and looking at the price and then putting it back on the shelf.
Yeah.
And now you could say, okay, that's not the biggest thing in the world.
Well, it is,
but actually it is when you just feel, after having worked all your life, I can't just have, lead the life I want to lead now, or I can't do things I even did a year ago. That's the sense of insecurity, I think, that eats away at people.
And then I thought of the psychopathic response he gave in Parliament yesterday. And to me, the man is a monster. Just like the Tories that went before him, we're paying for illegal immigrants, criminals. And I always say we should open our arms to genuine refugees. We're paying for criminals to be housed, given phones, fed and watered in hot hotels, while our own elderly are freezing. I'm sorry. If that makes me a racist for saying that, then so be it. because I think it's unfair, unjust and wicked. Wicked. I saw Ed Balls yesterday on GMTV. Someone showed me a clip where he was saying, oh well, the Tories lied before Labour. And I thought to myself, that's a typical mentality of one of these criminals in Parliament. Ed Balls, who was investigated several times for his lobbying connections, along with his wife, Yvette Cooper, and seems to me, in my own personal opinion, to have the morals of a sewer rat. He had the cheek, the temerity to try and justify Labour lies by saying the Tories had lied before them. And then he said, oh, but if you don't trust the politicians, who can you trust? Well, that's a question for another day. Hopefully, members of the community, members of smaller parties who get elected next time, people who don't curtail to the lobbyists, to big pharma, to the big corporations, people who actually care about the people. That's who, Ed. Not people like yourself, people who the media promote, give a soapbox to put people like the guy who started the petition to put them down, to condition people through that little box in the corner that they should expect politicians to lie. I thought, what an outrageous, what a self-centred thing to come out with. But that's the type of, the Piers Morgans, the Ed Balls, they're the type of people that the propaganda machine put in front of you to give the brainwashing out that they need. But when you think of it, this drive for net zero, a tree is the best carbon capture machine that we've got on the planet. CO2 levels historically are at one of the all-time lows. The real problems that we've got are things like the NOx, the nitrous oxides. According to energy experts I've spoken to, I know nothing about this. Energy experts that I've spoken to who aren't funded by the government say we need to develop the technology for the poisonous gases. Carbon isn't the problem. We are in a cycle of natural climate change, and man has had very little effect on that. So little effect that not one energy expert that I've spoken to has said it's worth all these people dying. It's worth you having to wear a coat in your home for us to hit the net zero targets that these criminals, these liars in parliaments all over the world, people like Bill Gates as well, someone so worried about climate change that he's bought a beachfront house for $43 million. Charlatan, these MPs in Parliament getting their bills paid by you, by your taxes. They're not worried about freezing this winter. I just hope people wake up. As you all know, I joined a party called the Alliance for Democracy and Freedom. Take a look at their website. People who care. I've met a lovely bunch there who really do care about people. And I hope that by the next election, enough people wake up, turn off the Ed Balls of this world, reject the Keir Starmers, the Boris Johnsons, the Sunaks, the Camerons, the Blairs of this world, and start voting for democracy. Start voting for their children and their grandchildren's futures. Starmer yesterday made my blood boil. Although I think in this cold weather, with these energy prices, that's probably a superpower, isn't it? I shouldn't be moaning. That's probably all he's going to do to help people with their energy bills this winter, and that's make their blood boil. He said energy prices are cheaper than they were last year. That's because last year, Keir, they were extortionate, which is why the government brought in help for anyone that needed help. And there's millions of those, trust me. In 2024, Britain, after the political classes have ripped us off for decades. I think the Independent asked who the nearly 3 million people are who signed that petition for another general election. I'll tell you who they are. They're normal people freezing in their homes. Normal people who go to work and pay your wages. Normal people, far right according to you, I expect. Far right people, working class people, salt of the earth, the people that put you in your positions. Listen to your lies. You disgust me, Starmer. Yes, I signed that petition, and I'll also take part in protest where everyone brings this country to a halt by not working. Hopefully you'll take notice of that if you won't take notice of the petition. Had to get that off my chest, folks. Check out the Alliance for Democracy and Freedom.